Hello, my name is Alfonzo, and today I'm going to talk about 11 people who made the oil industry. Now, this video is inspired by a post on oilprice.com by a man called Josh Owens, who listed 10 people who are most influential in the oil industry. This is my overview, a fair bit of overlap, um, but I found Mr. Owens' post a little bit too biased to America. Now, that's understandable because America has and is a vital and major part of the oil industry, but I'm going to go a little more international. Now, the oil industry, gas industry is built by strong, driven, and innovative people. Still is built by strong, driven, and innovative people. The next generation of leaders will evolve and deliver an evolved energy system through the energy transition to whatever that may actually end up being in the end. So the first person today is John D. Rockefeller. He is the founder of Standard Oil, American, and possibly the richest person in modern history. Founded Standard Oil in 1870 and bought up most of the US refining industry. Now, this kind of annoyed a lot of antitrust people, hence the picture of the octopus with the oil tank. And a campaigning journalist called Ida Tarbell led a campaign to break up its monopoly power, which is done using an antitrust law by the US government in 1911. Now, Standard Oil corporate descendants include Exxon, formerly the Standard Oil Company of New Jersey, Mobil, formerly the Standard Oil Company of New York, Chevron, formerly the Standard Oil Company of California, Amoco, formerly Standard Oil Company of Indiana, and Ohio, Standard Oil Company of Ohio. Both Amoco and Ohio were bought by BP, Marathon, and others. Now, in retirement, Rockefeller was a keen philanthropist, like many other people involved here. He funded universities, medical research, other education, and particularly the Baptist Church, being a devout Baptist. So why was he important? He was the founder of the US oil industry. Next on our list is Henri Deterding-Royal at Shell. Now, he was the founder of Shell as a giant company. He joined in 1896, Royal Dutch in 1896, became managing director in 1901. And he built up Royal Dutch, merging with Shell Transport and Trading to form a dual listed company with the listings both in Amsterdam and London, called Royal Dutch Shell. Now, they had extensive ventures worldwide during his reign in Indonesia, Mexico, Romania, Russian Empire, and Curacao in Dutch Antilles. And he was the main competitor to Standard Oil worldwide. RDS did have a bit of a tough time with revolutions in Russia, nationalizations in Mexico, but it recovered from all of this. Now, Deterding was a steadfast anti-communist. His wife was an emigre Russian baroness, and he developed strong Nazi sympathies in the 1930s, dying just before World War II started. Why is he important? He was the founder of an oil major. Armand Hammer, American Dealmaker. American, 1898 to 1990, had a very long life. Son of Jewish immigrants from Odessa, his father had links with the Bolshevik Party, hence he was doing quite a lot of deal making with the Soviets in the interwar period and then subsequently. He had a very diverse business career, going into oil by buying the Occidental Oil Company in 1958, and he was developing concessions in Libya, North Sea, etc. He was committed to building Russo-American relations, did a lot of work during building détente. As a bit of a sense of humor, he bought the Arm & Hammer toothpaste makers. Arm & Hammer, and he's a great-grandfather of actor Armie Hammer. Why is he important? He's a paradigm of a deal maker. St. John Philby, Saudi advisor. So Harry's St. John Bridger Philby, he was the father of Kim Philby, the Soviet spy, British intelligence officer. And he was also an Arabist, a committed Arabist, and converted to Islam and moved to Saudi Arabia, as then had just started. And he became a key advisor to King Ibn Saud of Saudi Arabia on foreign policy. And he negotiated the first concessions of foreign companies to drill for oil in Saudi Arabia. Initially it was SoCal, the predecessor of Chevron, made the first discoveries in 1932, bigger discoveries in 1936. And SoCal was joined by Texaco to establish Aramco, and later in 1948 joined by Esso and Mobil. So the four big American companies were all involved in Saudi Aramco, which became the largest oil company in the world. And Philby enabled that to happen. The Schlumberger brothers, they enabled exploration. There are two brothers, Conrad Schlumberger and Marcel Schlumberger, 1878 to 1936 and 1884 to 1953, respectively, born in Alsace, French inventors. And they were the pioneers of early geophysics. They invented wireline logging, enabling formation evaluations, running the first E-log in Alsace. There's a picture of that, a caratage, as they say in France. and developed Schlumberger into the national service company in the 1930s. They were active worldwide, everywhere. Still are. SLB today, as it's now known, is the largest oil service company in the world. Well, they're sort of tied with Halliburton, but they're big. And there's a little bit of trivia. The French actress Léa Seydoux, Bond girl, is Marcel's great-great-granddaughter. So why are these people so important? Well, they were technological pioneers and established the premier oil service company enabling exploration and production. Next, we come to three people: Mohammad Mosaddegh, Juan Pablo, Perez Alfonso, and Abdullah Tariki. And it's about resource nationalism. Now, Mosaddegh was Iranian prime minister in the 1950s. Alfonso Tariki were active a little bit later than that. Now, in the early part of the 20th century, a lot of developing world countries signed concession agreements with international oil companies that were, how shall I put it, a little bit disadvantageous to the host countries. And host countries were pretty angry about this. There was a plan to get themselves what they perceived to be a fair deal. And Mossadegh nationalized the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, predecessor of BP, the operations in Iran. He was then overthrown by the coup, which the Iranians are still upset about now. And the new government reached a compromise with Britain with a joint venture, and eventually it became nationalized fully by Iran. Alfonso and Tariki formed OPEC in 1960 to ensure a better deal for oil exporting countries. And their formation of OPEC was followed by extensive nationalizations in the 1960s, 1970s, and the formation of national oil companies. And they are the ones that now dominate global reserves, and to a lesser extent, well, not that much lesser, they're responsible for nearly half the world's oil production. So why are these people important? Well, resource nationalism changed geopolitics, and these people were responsible for resource nationalism. Next man on the list is this chap, Ahmed Zaki's Yamani, or Sheikh Yamani as he was known in the 1970s. 1930 to 2021, again had a very long life, and he was Saudi Petroleum Minister for 24 years, 1962 to 1986. And he served 4 Saudi monarchs. And what he did was he saw through the nationalization of Aramco and established Saudi Aramco as is now, which produces 10% of the world's oil to this day. Played a vital part in building up OPEC in the 1970s, privatized in 1973, which led to the first oil shock in the West, but brought quite a lot of prosperity to Saudi Arabia and other oil-producing countries. 1975, Yamani and other OPEC oil ministers were taken hostage by Carlos the Jackal, a terrorist at the time. After a 2-day-old deal, he was released. 1986, he was dismissed by King Fahd over disagreement and strategy. In retirement, he formed a private equity company and was also a prominent commentator in international affairs. And one of his key quotes was, "The Stone Age did not end because people ran out of stone." And what he meant was that oil will eventually be replaced by other technologies as a mainstay, but some oil use will continue forever. So why is he important? He was the public face of international oil in the 1970s. Now we move on to America. T. Boone Pickens, America's 1928 to 2019. He was a business magnate, a financier, forming an early hedge fund, and started an independent company called Mesa Petroleum in 1956. And he led quite a lot of activities as an activist shareholder. He saw quite a few American oil companies being bloated and complacent and wanted to shake them up. And he certainly did. He had several unsuccessful takeover bids for companies such as Cities Service, Gulf Oil, Phillips Petroleum, and Unocal, and he terrified the bejesus out of US oil executives. And to be honest, he had a point. And he led to a sharpening of management performance in US oil companies because he was always there hovering with a rather large sword saying you deliver or you get kicked out. Later life, he became a noted philanthropist, and he was also an advocate of alternative energy, particularly wind, combination with natural gas. So he had this plan called the Pickens plan, wind-gas combo in the central part of the United States where there's a lot of wind resources, plus also gas generating electricity. And why is he important? Well, he kept many executives on their toes, increased shareholder value, plus he was one of the first person to see the potential of renewable energy working potentially in combination with natural gas. Next set of people are 2 Russians, Viktor Chernomyrdin and Igor Sechin. Chernomyrdin, 1938 to 2010, Igor Sechin, born 1960. They were Russian businessmen. Chernomyrdin is important because he was effectively the founder of Gazprom. Now, when the Soviet Union broke up in 1992, the oil ministry was split up into several entities, which were then privatized. But Chernomyrdin kept Gazprom together. It was eventually floated off with the Russian government retaining the majority stake. but he kept it together as a gas giant. Chernomyrdin subsequently became prime minister in the 1990s. He was less successful as a prime minister, and today he's generally remembered in Russia for his malapropisms. He had quite a few sayings which are amusing to Russian speakers. Sechin is quite a different character in many ways. He's a close associate of President Putin. He's been with Putin since the old days in St. Petersburg in the 1990s, and he became chairman of Rosneft in 2004. And under Sechin, Rosneft absorbed several previously private Russian oil companies and joint ventures, forming a joint national oil company, which does have is listed, although the government contains control. So why are these people important? Well, they led Russia's re-emergence from the difficult times of the 1990s. They established Russian energy giants, Gazprom and Rosneft. Quite where they'll go to next is another question, but for that reason, they're important people. And now back to America. Two more pioneers, George P. Mitchell and Harold Hamm. George P. Mitchell, 1919 to 2013, and Harold Hamm, born 1945. They're American businessmen. They were the pioneers of fracking. So Mitchell started an independent company, Mitchell Energy, in the 1950s. Eventually that grew into a very large company, member of the Fortune 500, later acquired by Devon Energy. And in the 1980s and 1990s, Mitchell's company experimented with hydraulic fracking in a Barnett Shale in Texas, near Dallas. And this led to the fracking revolution for gas and meant that America became independent in terms of gas again. Harold Hamm founded a company which eventually became Continental Resources. And in 2003, they moved fracking into oil. So they looked at the Bakken Formation in North Dakota, and they developed oil using fracking and horizontal drilling. And they were the pioneers in that. And Continental grew to be one of the largest producers in the US with assets in all the shale business, all the shale basins. Now, both of these companies are US focused only. They don't look outside. And this has led to quite a lot of changes. You know, a lot of medium to large US companies effectively pulled out of international oil and gas, concentrated at home. People like Pioneer, people like Devon, they grew the US oil and gas business to effectively enable not quite full independence for US oil and gas, but something very close. Led to a successful revival in the US oil and gas industry. And then finally, John Browne, Beyond Petroleum. I've actually heard him speak. He's a very good speaker. British, born 1948, chief executive of BP from 1995 to 2007. And he transformed the company in many ways. Initially by taking over Amoco and Arco in the late 1990s during a period of low oil prices, and later entry to Russia with the TNK BP joint venture, and then transitioning BP into providing alternative energy as well as hydrocarbons. His slogan was Beyond Petroleum. Yes, beyond petroleum. Petroleum still plays a part, but moving as versa. But it was not all rosy. There were problems with the safety culture at BP. There was a Texas City refinery fire and quite a few problems that have happened since then. And BP are looking to sort it out. He's presently in the UK House of Lords. He's active supporting engineering, education, and environment. He's openly gay, which is unusual in the oil industry. But again, he wrote about it and looking towards being a more diverse and open company and society. So why is he important? He's a paradigm of a modern energy leader. Now he's been succeeded by a lot of other people. There's a chap called Bernard Looney, who's currently the chief executive of BP, various other folks within other companies, but he is to some extent a model for these people. So sum up, oil and gas industry is built by strong, driven, innovative people. There are many honorable mentions that I could have added, but obviously we need to keep the video down to a reasonable length. And the next generations of leaders are developing a new energy system. For example, a lady called Vicky Holub, who's running Oxy in America, who's looking extensively at carbon capture, storage, and carbon utilization as well. And we need vision, determination, flexibility, and innovation. We've had it, we'll carry on having it. So thank you very much. Please like, please subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.